said, Yoram.
Okay. Rambam Sefer HaMizvot. Misvot Aseh, positive commandment. We're up to number Chof Chaf, number 120. We last discussed as the Rambam segued into different types of pledges, sanctifications first based on values, the arachin, violation of benefit from things in the status of hekdesh, and then now on to other types of obligatory givings, which started with yesterday the net arivai, the produce of a vineyard on the 4th year of its growth, brought to Yerushalayim in the status of kedusha, and then consumed over there. Mizvah Chof Chaf number 120. He shesiva lahaniach pe'ah me'atibuot v'ha'ilanot v'hadomeh lahem. And now, in terms of pledges, we're going to speak about something that's circumstantially obligatory, which means only based on someone who has a field. And the next three Misvot, this included, is going to be the three famous Misvot of that which you contribute from your field directly to Aniyim. And the first one's called Pe'ah, or corner or end. And the Mizvah, to leave the end of your field in a certain prescribed amount of your the produce of your field and trees, the ground and or trees, for others. The Rambam didn't say for who, just to leave it. The pasuk says ta'azob otam. So the two words that make this a positive commandment are leave them. Ahar zichro hape'ah. After the Torah had mentioned already the obligation of pe'ah, then the Torah said as a command ta'azob otam, and we'll explain more in a moment. Because ba'erev masechet makot shape'ah hi lav hanitak la'aseh. So the Gemara teaches us that the mizvah pe'ah is really a mizvah lo ta'aseh in its essence, but it produced a mizvah ta'aseh. Mizvah ta'aseh is attached to it by default. It's a lav hanitak la'aseh. And here is how this plays out. Umnam halav amaro lo techaleh. The lo ta'aseh is the beginning of the pasuk. Lo techaleh pe'asadecha bekisrecha umlechet chesirecha lo telakeh la'ani v'lager ta'azob otam. So the Misvah begins with a lo techaleh. Don't consume or don't finish off or don't rid of the pe'ah of your sadeh, the end or the corner of your field, the produce of it, as you are in your procedure of harvesting, etc. And the end of the pasuk says, "La'ani v'lager ta'azov otam, v'ha'aseh amaro ta'azov otam." Right. So, in other words, because of the fact that you have a law ta'aseh that you cannot consume it and rid and harvest it as you are going through your field, then there's got to be something to do with it. And the extension from that is the aseh, lav hanitak la'aseh, which is ta'azov otam la'ani v'lager. Pasuk tells us, to those in need, you must leave that pe'ah. So that's the mizvah ta'aseh. So this mizvah has a masechet named after it, called pe'ah. The masechet of pe'ah and Seder Zera'im, which has no Gemara, deals with more than just pe'ah. Because it's the first of these type of mitzvot, the masechet is named after it. V'din Torah shelo tehen oheget ela ba'aretz. So Torah law is that this is not a mitzvah for outside of Eretz Yisrael, only in the land. Mizvah Chof Chaf Aleph number 121. He shesivanu lahaniach halechet. So going with the mizvah pe'ah is that the Torah also commanded us to leave the lechet. What's the lechet? Hu amaro, and the source is v'lechet chesirecha lo telachet. The same pasuk we just quoted, which is that which drops. Literally means the gathering. The lekot means to gather. And the gatherings, but it's referring to that which drops, lo telachet, same word, don't gather. In other words, the same root word, lechet and telachet, are really being used for the same topic, but for opposite activities. Lechet as a noun is being used for that, the droppings. That's what you have dropped. And lo telachet is don't gather, right? Meaning, of course, there are detailed halachot with this, but the general idea, lema'aseh, is that it's something that you had already picked up and gathered in your process of harvesting. And then if you have several, let's say you're talking about grains, so several stalks fell, you could be talking about some other species, and several items fell from you as you are traveling through in the process of harvesting. Lo telachet, do not gather them. This is also a misvat lo ta'aseh, that bread and aseh, because at the end of the same pasuk it says la'ani v'lager ta'azob otam, and that's how you know you have also a positive commandment here, not just the negative. Lo telachet is the negative. We're not doing that negative commandments right now. The negative is the lo ta'aseh is don't gather it. The misvat aseh that you're fulfilling if you do leave it alone is ta'azob otam, which the Rambam is assuming that you understand from the last misvah. So in the same Gemara that explains that the misvah pe'ah is a lav hanitak la'aseh, it says the same thing about leket. So Masechet pe'ah covers pe'ah and leket. The din Torah and so too to this misvah that it only applies in Israel, not outside. Misvah Kov Chaf Gimal, and this is the third of the set of these misvot that always are mentioned together. Kisha Sivano, number 122, Kov Chaf Bet, Kisha Sivano Lahaniah Omer Hashikha, to leave the forgotten bundle. Hu Amaro, the source in the Torah is V'shachachta Omer Basadeh Lo Tashuv Lekachto. Lager layatom va'almana yihiyeh. So literally this means, and you forgot the bundle in the field, don't return to take it, rather to the stranger, the orphan and widow, it should be, yihiyeh, shall it be. Hine amaro yihiyeh. So the Torah uses that word, it shall be. Who has sivui? Lahaniha. That's actually the command word, to leave it, meaning it should be for them, meaning I'm expecting you to leave it for them. And that's how we got counting this as a misvat aseh. So the equivalent of the term ta'azov otam, leave them, with the last two misvot of pe'ah leket, is the term yihiyeh, it shall be, with the omer. So what is the omer? Omer is similar to leket, but it's not something that you ever had that you drop. It's that the way harvest works in fields, especially with grain, is that before you actually cut it from the ground, you bundle it and let it develop a little more and dry out. And then afterwards, you cut them so that they fall on the ground in bundles. And where do you have bundles that were cut and harvested that you are now picking them up to bring them with you? Should you bypass one long enough and therefore forget it behind you, so that in the spirit of the lechet, that also has to be left to those in need. Vizo ena noheget min haaretz min haTorah ela ba'aretz, like the previous two. It only applies in fields in Eretz Yisrael. Like the previous two, the details of this also can be found in Masechet Pe'ah. Mizvah Kov Chaf Gimal, number 123. Hishasivanu lahaniach ma sheyesh bakeren kishiyipsor oto la'aniyim hanekra olelot. So now let me just introduce this, and the next Mizvah are basically the equivalents of pe'ah and leket, of the corner and the droppings, misvot, regarding grain, vegetables, and other produce from the ground. The equivalent of those regarding vineyard, grapes from a vineyard, are these next two misvot. And so what the Rambam just said, that we have misvah to leave that which is in the in the vineyard. Kishi ipsod, the word ipsod means it's harvesting for grapes. When you harvest it for the poor people, something called olelot. Uba katuv gamken ta'azov otam achar zichro ha'olelot. So after the Torah, Parashat Kedushim mentions this term called olelot, later, and as a sum up command, says ta'azov otam, leave them. Now the Rambam, he doesn't go into describing what it is, but it's an interesting type of pe'ah. It's not really the corner of the field where you leave a cluster of grapes in the corner of the field. Rather, it's on a cluster itself, depending on the actual structure of the cluster, you're leaving a certain amount of grapes. That's sort of the corner or the end. And like lekesh haun pe'ah, this also only applies in Eretz Yisrael, and also could be found in Masechet Pe'ah, and its twin is Misvot Kov Kav Daled number 124. Ishisival lahaniah mashiyipol v'yet padred min ha'anavim bebesiratam la'anim. Also, this is the equivalent of the lechet, of the dropping. When you are gathering from the vineyard and the grapes, and some fall as you harvest, to leave them for the poor person. And the source in the pasuk is uferet karmecha lo telachet la'aniv lager ta'azov. And this is known as peret, right? So peret and olelot is the equivalent of lechet and pe'ah, or the order was olelot and peret here, which is the equivalent of pe'ah, the corner, and of lechet, of the droppings. So here it says, and explicitly in the Torah, that which drops from your vineyard, meaning the grapes, don't gather them. Rather, give them to those and leave them for those in need, and that's the Misvot Aseh. So all of these have a Misvot Lo Ta'aseh, which gives way to a Misvot Aseh, a positive commandment. Like the previous four Misvot, this also only applies in lands and vineyards of Eretz Yisrael, and also its details can be found in Masechet Pe'ah. So now you have 5 Misvot discussed in Masechet Pe'ah, right? There are some more also. Okay, Misvot Kov Kafeh, let's do another one. Number 125. So now, the last 5 were called circumstantial. If you have a field, this is also a circumstantial Misvot, as was the one prior to all of them, the Netar Eva'i, which is the grapes of the 4th year. So they're all Misvot for landowners. They're all Misvot of taking part of your harvest and of your crops and of your yield of your land. However, 5 Misvot ago, the grapes of the 4th year was a Misvah where you bring to Yerushalayim and then you benefit from them. The 5 Misvot were 6 Misvot ago. The 5 Misvot which followed were all items of land that you have to dedicate only to the needy, or items of produce rather, that you dedicate only to the needy. This Misvot number 125, is a Misvah where you're also separating part of your produce called bikurim from the word bechor, meaning the first of that particular species of the year of your produce, but here you're not leaving it for the poor people. Like the Kerem Reva'i, you're also bringing it to the Bet HaMikdash. What are you doing with it there? The source in the pasuk is Reshit Bikurei Admatecha Tabi Bet Adonai Elohecha, which means the first of that which has Bikurei, literally means that which has blossomed and matured of your land, meaning the first of a given species which has developed, yielding from your property, from your land. Tavi, bring to the house of God, bring to the Bet HaMikdash. Now, this is in the beginning. The Misvat, the command itself over here, is a command from Parashat Mishpatim, repeated another time in Mishpat Kitisa, but the elaboration is in Misvah in Parashat Kitabo, the procedure of when you bring it, the procedure of bringing it to the Bet HaMikdash, and there's a whole ceremony, and bringing it to the Kohen in the basket and making a proclamation in front of him is described there. So you know from the context of the pasuk is that the mizvah, it only pertains when there is a Bet HaMikdash, because you have to bring it to the Bet HaMikdash. Unlike other mizvot that are just based on the land, this is based specifically on the Bet HaMikdash. So it's limited to the 7 species of Eretz Yisrael, and its fruits obviously from the land of Israel, but only also from close contiguous lands to Israel. One is Syria in the north, and one is to the east, the other side of the Jordan River, which used to be Israel proper. They call Jordan today. That's just the modern territory. It was Israel proper. So there is a separate Masechet of the Mishnah called Bikurim. That's where these laws are, obviously. And there it's explained, leaves the Rambam at the end, that these belong to the Kohen. So unlike the Net HaReva'i, you don't consume them when you go to Eretz Yisrael. Rather, you leave these, you present them to the Kohen, these Bikurim, and you leave them and you give them as a gift to the Kohen. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.